Hey guys, welcome back to the FPL Talk channel, and today we are going to be taking a look at the price drops. Yes, it is a very exciting day. We finally, after a long awaited time, find out the prices of some FPL teams. 5 teams there are that we know now: Man City, Brentford, Brighton, Leeds and Arsenal. We know a few players from each club and their prices, so we're going to dive in and take a look at some players that interest me and some good value ones that you could put in your team. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So I don't think it takes a genius to work out the first player we're going to be talking about is Erling Harlan. Now there's a lot of speculation around this one at what his price would come in as, whether it be 12 million, 12.5, 11.5, 11 million. However, he's come in at 11.5 million, which I think is a very good price for him actually. I'm quite happy with that. Obviously, I think he was going to go in my team no matter what, especially with Man City's fixtures in the first couple of game weeks. But that price makes it even more likely that I'm going to put him in my starting game week 1 team. Now, I honestly thought that he might have been like 12, 12.5 with how good he was in the Bundesliga last season. The only thing that scares me about him is his injuries, because obviously he has that massive list of different injuries. It's not the same occurring one, it's loads of different ones, so that makes him a high-risk injury player. But I feel like the price of 11.5 million, obviously, like we said in previous videos, this allows you, if he does get injured, to downgrade to many other forwards or swap to one that is a similar price because he's so highly priced in FPL. But honestly, I'm quite happy with 11.5 million. I am not complaining with that at all. So the next player we're going to talk about is Kevin De Bruyne. Now he's coming in at 12 million, 0.5 million more than Erling Harlan. Now I feel like you only want to go with one premium Man City player. You don't want 2 premiums really from the same team other than Kane and Son. That would be my exception. But I'm slightly leaning towards going for Haaland more than De Bruyne. I just think Haaland's going to get a lot of goals. And even though De Bruyne is quality, and we saw that at the end of last season, he's got a higher rotational risk, especially with the Champions League. And Haaland, you know, is their pretty much only out-and-out striker, unless Pep Guardiola does the thing where he plays Foden as a centre-forward / striker. But if you went for De Bruyne over Haaland, I would see why you've done that because of, you know, how quality De Bruyne is. But personally for me, it's got to be Haaland. Just with the amount of goals he's going to get. Like, obviously it's a risk, he's not Premier League proven, whereas you might feel the safer option is to go for De Bruyne as he's been proving it for time, and you might feel that's the safer option for you. So I think either of these players work. They're both fairly, I would say fairly priced, but personally for me, the Man City asset I would go for as a premium is Haaland. Now the next Man City player we're going to take a look at is Cancelo. He's coming in at 7 million. Now, honestly, if you looked at how many returns defenders got last year compared to some midfielders, it was way higher. So 7 million for Cancelo, I would actually say, even though it's quite highly priced for a defender, is actually pretty good. Like, you might want to get a cheaper midfielder and boost up on that defence just because of how strong Man City are defensively, and the fact that he's 7 million, and you're not going to get many other midfielders that return as well as Cancelo will. The one thing I will say is if they do sign Cucurella from Brighton, there could be a rotational risk there because I see them moving Cancelo back to right back, and that means it's him and Kyle Walker, whereas Cucurella is there at left back. However, João Cancelo is absolute quality, so you would expect him to start a majority of games. So he is definitely someone I'm looking and putting in for game week 1, and I'm going to keep an eye on him and other prices that are around that mark. So finally, we have some other Man City player prices here. We have Kyle Walker, which actually surprised me at 5 million. Now, that might be one I actually go for. Yes, it's a rotational risk, but I expect Kyle Walker to play most games if he can avoid injury. And only 5 million for a Man City defender that can start a lot of games could be an absolute bargain. Now, you've also got Reuben Diaz at 6 million, which also isn't too bad. Personally, from midfielders, I would pretty much avoid all of them. The rotational risk is just too great with Pep Roulette. However, if Sterling was to go to Chelsea for 10 million, obviously I mean on fantasy, if Chelsea got Sterling for 10 million in real life, they'd be absolutely buzzing. But for 10 million on fantasy, if Sterling's in a Chelsea shirt, I actually would back putting him in your team just because he's very underrated and he's just getting good numbers. And obviously at Man City, he's on that rotational risk, but at Chelsea, I feel like he'll be a lot more cemented because obviously he's better than Pulisic and probably Werner, even though Werner did have a good end to last season. But if Sterling goes to Chelsea, I would defo look at getting him in. And let me know in the comments, what Man City players are you eyeing up? So now, as you can imagine, we're going to take a look at Arsenal players. Now, the first one is Kaiosaka, and he's coming in at 8 million. And I think most people were not best thrilled with this. They thought he should be cheaper. But what you've got to remember this year is Kaiosaka is on penalties for Arsenal, which plays a big factor. Look at the points Mo Salah got last year because of how many penalties he scored. I definitely think Saka is someone you could look at getting. 8 million, and his returns last year were so good. He was so influential for that Arsenal team. And with them penalties, I actually think he's good value at 8 million. And he's certainly someone I would look at putting in my team just because of how consistent he was for them. If we're moving on, the next one actually excites me. We've got Martin Ødegaard for 6.5 million. Now, he plays in that centre attacking mid position for Arsenal, and with them signing Jesus up front, I can see him getting a lot more assists. Obviously, last season he had Lacazette and Aubameyang for parts who just aren't as clinical, whereas Jesus is pacey and he's pretty deadly. We saw him score 4 goals in one game last season for Man City in not a lot of time in that game. And with Martin Ødegaard's quality, he showed glimpses last season. This could really be an underrated asset for 6.5 million. That is like a hidden gem. That's a bargain. I think his ownership will be very high. However, I wouldn't miss out. I think this is someone I could look at getting. And obviously, if you only want one Arsenal midfielder, you might prefer to go Ødegaard over Saka, even though Saka might get more points. But for Ødegaard's value, this allows you to spend money elsewhere, whilst he'll probably still get a lot of returns. Now, if we move on and look at some other prices of the Arsenal players, I think this is someone that a lot of people are going to look at having. Ramsdale in goal for 5 million. I think there's going to be a few keepers priced around that 5 million mark, so I'm going to wait to see who else gets put there and then make my decision. But Ramsdale is looking like a good option to have, especially with Arsenal strengthening going forward. You would expect them to dominate games more, and this means he can have more clean sheets, obviously. But moving on, if we take a look now at the graphic for their other players, Nketiah is coming at 7 million, right, which actually shocks me. That's very pricey for someone where obviously fantasy football cannot show Gabriel Jesus because he's not officially announced. But Eddie Nketiah for 7 million, I don't think anyone's going to be doing that. Ben White and Tomiyasu really interest me. 4.5 million. A lot of people on Twitter were saying Tomiyasu, they're going to go for him. But if you've seen his list of injuries, I don't think that's a safe bet. I think Ben White is the option I'd go for as a cheap Arsenal defender if you are going to go for one. Simply because he's a pretty much nailed on starter next to Gabriel. However, William Saliba is returning, so it'll be interesting to see what Arsenal do with him. But Ben White is really taking my interest. And then we have Smith Rowe and Martinelli for 6 million. Now, the only bad thing about that is they counteract each other. You know, they've got rotational risk with one another, so neither is guaranteed to play. That's the only risky thing about that. And then we've got Vieira for 6 million. Now, I don't know if he'll start many games. He's not Premier League proven, so we'll have to watch that one. But other than that, let's go on to the next team. So there's only a few more players I want to actually talk about, and starting off we've got Ivan Toney. Now 7 million, I think it's quite a steep price for him. I think Brentford, if they lose Eriksen, are going to struggle a lot this year just because they lack creativity. If you look at Brentford's record when Eriksen actually moved to the club, it increased drastically from before they had him, and it allowed Toney to get some more goals because he was able to link up with Eriksen's creativity. But 7 million, I feel like not many people are going to go for that, because you know, if he was like 6 million, then maybe. Like last year he was around that 6 million mark, 6.5 or something like that, and he was a lot more accessible. But for 7 million, that is quite steep for someone who could be fighting relegation this year. If we look at some other prices, we have someone that a lot of people were interested in on Twitter and got discussing about. We've got Raya. Now, he's only 4.5 million, which obviously we're looking for those 4.5 million gems in the goalkeeper position. But we've got a keeper coming up later who far more interests me for 4.5 million. However, if you think Ray is a good option, he's going to get a lot of save points. I personally am not going to go for him because I just feel like they're not going to do well this year, Brentford, and that's just personally. You know, they tended to concede a lot of goals last year, even though they did get a few wins and didn't do too bad in their league positioning. But this year, teams are strengthening majorly, and Brentford haven't done too much in the transfer window, so it is a worry. And there's only one defender that I would actually consider from this bunch, and that's Nico Henry. Now, Nico Henry has bags of pace, and he's a very attacking fullback. who's only coming in at 4.5 million. So he could be one that you could look at rotating on the bench, on and off when he's got a good game week and when he hasn't. So quickly taking a look at some Brighton assets. Now, first of all, we're going to talk about Cucurella. Now, he was very good for Brighton last season. He proved to be a very good signing for them in the long term, coming in at 5 million. Even though he's still at Brighton, he does get great attacking returns, and Brighton very much predominantly focus their play down the wing backs, and he's at the forefront of that attacking wise, and they tend to dominate games with high possession. If they can sign a better striker, I know they've got Undav, so it'll be interesting to see how he does, but if they can sign a really good striker in the summer, Brighton could have great numbers for assists, and Cucurella could be whipping those balls in. But he is linked to Man City now. 5 million if he moves to Man City, I think could be very cheeky, because I think Pep, as we said before, will play Cancelo on the right and then move Cucurella to left back, obviously. And this could be a great sneaky move. And then if we look at the next player, this is one that excites me here. Robert Sanchez for 4.5 million. Now, this man for 4.5 million is an absolute bargain. We saw Brighton manage to finish in the top half of the table last season, and he will have had many clean sheets last year, and 4.5 million I just feel like is a right bargain compared to Raya, who was also 4.5 million. Sanchez seems like a far better deal for your money's worth, and I think if there's no other well-priced keepers at 4.5 million, he is going to be my man between the sticks, as he was a few seasons ago when he was nicely priced just like this. Right, so into the last team. This is probably the team I'm going to avoid, because I feel like Leeds may be fighting for relegation and concede a lot of goals just like they did last season. They've lost Calvin Phillips and Rafinha, so we're still yet to know Rafinha's price, because FPL didn't announce it with Leeds because of all the rumours that he might transfer, obviously. But we've got another 4.5 million keeper in Meslier. Now, last season I think he did get the most saves in the Premier League, but there was a reason for that, because he got bombarded with shots. But for 4.5 million, you might want those save bonuses and feel like you're getting your money's worth. But personally, Sanchez is still edging it for me. You have Jack Harrison at 6 million, but you know, if you're looking for a more budget option, he's not too bad. However, I just don't feel like Leeds are going to score too many goals unless they make a few signings. So they are the prices so far. Let me know in the comments, do you think these players are fairly priced? And if you are new here, please do subscribe and leave a like on the video, and I will see you in the next one.